All right, let's talk about Ukraine now. And retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges is the former commander of U.S. Army forces in Europe, and he is also the Pershing Chair for Strategic Studies at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Hi, General.
Dana, it's good to see you again.
Sir, you've just come back from Ukraine. What left the biggest impression on you? Because it's not the first time you've been there.
I was impressed with President Zelensky. I had the chance to spend a little over an hour with him in a very small meeting, and he impressed me with his realistic understanding of the threat. He knows that his government and also the sovereignty of his country are under huge danger from Russia. He knows that, but he also is wrestling. He's having to balance dealing with that threat, but also keeping his economy going. And so he's frustrated, frankly, with the White House and the Pentagon, that there's so much loud noise that, you know, any day there's going to be this huge attack, and it's putting a lot of pressure on their economy, which of course is exactly what the Kremlin also wants.
On a scale of 1 to 100, where does General Hodges put the likelihood of an invasion by Russia now?
90%.
So now, you wouldn't want to accuse the White House of overstating the threat then?
Well, it's the type. The White House has not overstated the threat at all. It's what does this new attack or new offensive look like? I believe it's going to happen shortly after the Winter Olympics. Everything is moving into place. More ships are coming into the Black Sea, as we all know. But I think it's not going to be this massive assault, big giant red arrows heading towards Kyiv. I think it's going to be something that's a lower profile, that's still accomplishes what the Kremlin wants, which is to continue to undermine and squeeze Ukraine, but below some threshold where even all of our European allies would have a hard time going along with maximum sanctions.
Right. And I certainly didn't mean to suggest you were accusing the White House of overstating the threat. It's President Zelensky who again and again has tried to, to damper down some of the rhetoric that's been coming out of the White House, feeling that that's not doing the situation any good. So when you talk about a limited incursion, or how would you characterize what you think the Russians are about to do?
Yeah, well, if I may, two things happened when I was in Kyiv that illustrated President Zelensky's concerns about the economy. Number one, I spoke with the head of the American Chamber of Commerce there in Kyiv, and he said that most of the American companies were approaching him saying, "Should we pull our people out?" So that's significant. Mm-hmm. Secondly, me personally, my flight from Lufthansa from Kyiv back to Frankfurt, the departure time changed overnight from 6 in the morning to 4:15 in the morning without notification. And we discovered that Lufthansa is looking to reduce the amount of time its planes spend on the ground in Ukraine and the number of flights it's having. So these are real implications that President Zelensky has to address. And he emphasized he's not asking for troops. He's asking for what the administration is doing now, the tools with which they can defend themselves, but also financial resources so that he can grow the size of his army. So that's why this is a big deal. Now, a new Russian attack. First of all, I would not use the word incursion. That sounds fairly tame. But whatever this attack is going to look like, there's going to be cruise missiles, there's going to be cyber, there's going to be destruction, people are going to get killed. It's not going to be a breeze for either side. But I think more likely is that we're going to see amphibious operations on the Black Sea coast and the coast of Sea of Azov, probably with the Russian fixed-wing aircraft providing support. I just don't see the big red arrow going into Kyiv. It's possible, and of course they'll be up there so that the Ukrainians are having to worry about that. But I think if it's that, then everybody in Europe would have to go along with the worst possible sanctions. And I think the Kremlin would like to avoid that.
Well, I mean, the Americans, the Europeans have said one toe across the border will bring about hard, heavy sanctions against Russia, and not scaling up a response, but the hammer will fall in terms of what the Europeans and the US are able to do.
Well, and that, you're exactly right. That is what they've said. And I hope that's what would happen if, one single Russian unit advances further into Ukraine.
And what would they be trying to do, like, Ben? I mean, you're saying that, okay, they obviously, and we're seeing ships move into the Black Sea as we speak. So, right. They do some amphibious landings, they move into eastern Ukraine to go where then, if they're not going to Kiev?
Imagine a boa constrictor around Ukraine, okay? And it's a Russian boa constrictor that is squeezing. It's been doing this since 2014. It's been squeezing. They invaded Ukraine in 2014. They kept Crimea. They are in the Donbass, supporting, leading, equipping, arming the so-called separatists. And now they've got 130,000 or so troops along the northern border. The Black Sea Fleet is being enhanced by additional ships arriving this week from the Baltic Fleet, plus the ships from the Caspian Flotilla. They were brought over last year. They never left. They've stayed in Sea of Azov. So this squeezing continues to choke the economy of Ukraine, and it puts massive pressure in hopes that either Ukraine or the West will blink, that somebody will say, okay, we don't want a conflict, and then make some kind of massive or significant
concession.
Thank you. If we don't blink, and if they decide to go ahead and attack, which would be the next level of pressure, then I think what they would do is probably something along the coast of Azov, this so-called land bridge that goes from Mariupol down to Crimea. They could do that. I mean, Azov is not even international water. So I think there will be some pressure on some countries to say, come on, this, that's clearly an internal issue. This is not international. And I just think that the Russians are betting, based on past performance, that there will be some governments that will be reluctant to go along with this. Represents something calling for sanctions like you've never seen before.
What do you think?
I think that Germany is the key. I believe that Chancellor Scholz, in his meeting with President Biden back on Monday, I think they have a very, very clear agreement. I was impressed, actually, even though Chancellor Scholz didn't say the words Nord Stream 2 like people were begging him to do. He said multiple times, we are 100% completely in agreement with the White House. I mean, that's about as far as, that was enough to convince me. Because look, he has a problem with his left flank, just like President Biden has a problem with his left flank on a lot of issues. And so I thought what Scholz said was compelling.
Some couple of quick questions. What do you think of President Macron, then, of France, saying after he met with Putin and he was in Kiev himself, that he's gotten assurances and he thinks it's frozen while diplomatic efforts continue? Is that just wishful thinking?
I think I'm embarrassed, actually. First of all, President Macron is doing this. He's got his own election in April. So he needs to show, France is this, and that he's now the guy. Now that Merkel's gone, it's going to be him that's going to solve this. How embarrassing that he lands in Kyiv and says, I've gotten a guarantee or assurances from the Kremlin that they will not invade. That there will be no escalation and no further deterioration. Within minutes, Peskov says, well, we didn't guarantee that. So I think, and the whole setup, I mean, you've seen the memes of the big giant table with Macron and Putin at each end of this massive white table.
Well, I've seen the memes and the cartoons afterwards where they turned it into a teeter-totting
a seesaw table, or the Last Supper, with the Jesus and the disciples sitting at that table. So, I mean, that tells you how little respect people have for what was done there. I see nothing really significant or meaningful coming out of that. Germany is the key.
You're a great analyst, but you are a military person.
Yeah.
Can the Ukrainians do damage to an invading army? can they hold ground, or under the weight of what you see the Russians have on the Ukrainian border right now, they might be able to fight back a little bit, but they're going to be moving back towards and securing big cities like Kiev.
So yes, I do believe that they can fight very effectively and that they will. But clearly, the Russians have a significant advantage in air power and in naval power. There's no doubt about it. And they also had the attacker's advantage of picking the time and the place, because Ukrainians are not going to take the bait and do something that the Russians would then point to as a context and so as a pretext, excuse me. So the Russians do have several advantages. However, these are Ukrainians fighting on their home territory. They are much better than they were in 2014 in a variety of ways. And I think the aid that the West has been providing obviously has contributed to that. But also, 130,000 soldiers. That sounds like a lot, but if you start thinking about, okay, if you spread that along the whole northern border of Ukraine, all of a sudden it's like, well, that's not so much. I mean, the stadium for the University of Michigan holds 100,000 people. So there's some context on size. In the 1943, when the Soviets recaptured Kyiv in November of 1943, they had over 700,000 troops involved when they encircled it. 7,000 pieces of artillery were involved. And it took a month for them to reduce Kyiv. And that's the Kyiv of 1943. Fast forward, what's that, 60, 80 years, and the city of Kyiv on the banks of the Dnieper River is a massive, massive city. 100,000, even if 100,000 got there with everything and everybody, there's not enough to take Kyiv.
And it's a beautiful historic city, and it would be a crime to see somebody trying to bomb that city or take that
city. Especially when President Putin always talks about this is the birthplace of, Russia. It's, he's going to destroy it. I don't think so.
So you think, final question, you think Putin may be underestimating his advantages and abilities, and this may not go as quickly and as easily as maybe some of his advisors who are whispering in his ear right now and perhaps not giving him the best advice?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of thinking and writing out there now about just that topic that you mentioned, that for COVID reasons, for other reasons, and as often happens with an autocratic leader, he's not getting a whole lot of different dissenting opinions. This letter by this General Ivashov, who represents the Assembly of All Russian Officers or something like that, that came out just a few days ago, that was a powerful letter. I mean, he's saying, this is a very respected guy within the kind of the former Russian military.
I think he used the term criminality in terms of a possible invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying that there is no justification, that this is all about Russia's domestic situation and that President Putin is trying to distract. The fact that he's hadn't been arrested and that letter stayed posted on the websites for as long as it has, I think he's got some protection somewhere. And so I think that President Putin has put himself in a situation now where he's running out of options. He either has to climb back down, or somebody in the West has to just roll over on something, or he has to, declare victory because he's got everybody talking to him and they're respecting Russia now, and then he can go home. But I'm not.
That would be the best hope, but it doesn't look like that, and we're going to know soon, based on predictions of timing. So, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the privilege, Dana.